Hey, I'm Chris Gilchrist. I get to serve as the executive pastor here at Stonebridge Church in the Woodlands. Welcome to Sunday Continued. This is where we keep the conversation going after Sunday, asking the questions we didn't get to, talking through what this actually looks like in real life, and figuring out how to live it out during the week. If you're new to Stonebridge or just exploring, we're so glad that you're here. Our heart is simple. It's to lead people to a real, healthy, and growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you're local to the Woodlands or Magnolia, we'd love to meet you sometime. We gather every Sunday at 9:30 and 11:05. Now let's dive in. Well, Steve, we're back.
We're back.
And you started us on a new sermon series called After Jesus.
Jesus.
Not after Easter.
Not after Easter, after Jesus. That's right.
By now, in my mind, and straight to after Easter now, every time I see it. So you've corrupted me as well.
Yeah, I did.
By thinking of
but
that.
But that really is kind of the idea of it is what, after Easter, how is life different or why is life different because of what Jesus did? That really is kind of the concept of it. But it just felt more fun to say after Jesus and then have to explain, I don't mean post-Christian. This is not saying Christianity is gone or anything. It's the opposite.
That was one of the questions I got was, does this mean that we're doing like a sermon series on what do we do in a post-Christian world? And I was like, kind of, but that's not really the idea behind it. So what is the idea behind it? Why the name After Jesus?
It was just because I've always loved to think about how much Jesus changed the last 2,000 years, how much the world changed. And I know that people will say, but look at all the bad things that happen and continue to happen. And that's true. Probably has more to do with population growth. And I think it has to do with the growth of wealth and technology and everything else that changes everything as far as cultures and people are concerned. But the positive changes that we've gone through, the amazing changes we've gone through, there's so many because of who Jesus was and what he did that you had a whole new explosion of what people believed and the walking away from what they had held to before and what they had believed before, which, we might know about it historically, but as far as the impact of our lives, it's just kind of hard to understand it because this is our life. This is where we live and what we go through.
Yeah, I think there's times that we've just been inundated so long, like in our Christian world, in our Christian worldview, that we don't always have a good insight of how did Jesus actually change history. I maybe understand how did he change my life, in the ways that he's changed that. But I think sometimes we lack an understanding of the good that Christianity has done in the world, because I think sometimes, you hear people talking constantly about the bad, and here's the ways that it's gone wrong. But there's so much good that's been because of what Christ is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up, and we talk about this because I grew up in a church and grew up in a Christian home. So it's easy to just assume this is kind of the baseline, and it's always been this way and will always be this way, but that's not true. And when you get to a point in your life, as I know you had to get to also, where you realize this is something that I have to decide what I believe in, who I'm going to follow with my life also. I can't just say this is just the way it is. Yeah. And that is just an enormous part of what Jesus did bring into the world. The place of saying, who are you going to follow? Yeah. You choose. Who you going to trust in? You choose.
Well, it's interesting. You and I both kind of have a similar time in which we decided that, hey, we're going to do this. Like we grew up in a Christian home, but that moment of, hey, I'm going to choose to be a Christ follower now, and then to see the change, like we're both late high school is kind of our time range. What happened, though? I was curious while you were talking, because you were saying, hey, in junior year or somewhere around there, I became a Christian and I started taking it more seriously. And you talked about how that change happened in you. What did that do to like your friends around you? How did they respond to your change that you started to live out?
I mean, there were some friends that all of a sudden I wasn't friends with. They went a different direction, chased after other things than I wanted to. And I think the thing that was most noticeable to me was the new friends that I made because of my faith that really weren't like me. And, you would think you're still people like, I mean, we went to the same.
How are they different?
Yeah, we went to the same school, but their backgrounds were different. I have a good friend named Dale Ellenberg. He's a preacher also. And my sister, we were just talking this morning, she was letting me know he's got a surgery coming up that hopefully will alleviate some pain in his old age on his knee. And Dale would say, he would walk around saying, "Here." And he just had this kind of, listen, I'm a Carolina.
Wait, Steve, what did he say?
Here. So
Can
that's
you translate that for me?
I don't know what that means, but it was just like, if somebody's calling roll here, and, but
here.
everything was,
Okay,
here, but everything was here. And I used to think that is just so Carolina redneck, and which, I am also. And I just sounded so uneducated and whatever. And I thought, man, and so because of that, Dale and I weren't really friends at all. Well, we were both believers, we were both Christians. And I always laugh about it because I found myself several months later saying "here," and I just picked it up.
It's one of the positive influences of your Christian friends.
It is.
It changes your language.
Yep, I picked it up from being around him. He's been a great friend, and like I said, we ended up going in similar directions, not together, into. I mean, he had more a sense of he wanted to be a pastor of a church. I think he actually taught for a while too.
That's awesome.
At a school, taught Greek. So he works with Greek
brutally,
also. Yeah. So, it's
No, it's I remember too, for me, like that was one of the things that I remember noticing of whenever I wasn't following Jesus to my full potential. Let's just frame it that way. Thinking the people that I later became friends with, my preconceived first thought of them before I became a follower of Jesus was very similar, very dorky. And why are you like this? And I remember completely understanding it once I became a follower of Jesus of, hey, they're just trying to do good things and to help people and to care for people. And my judgment of them of like, oh, they're not like the athletes and I don't think that they're cool was like, oh gosh, I had a pretty stuck up version in my head of what these people were like before I became a follower of Jesus.
Well, and you were probably like me. You were still drawn to that, to the athletics and all those things too, and people who had similar interests, but at the same time, there was this new relationship with Jesus that caused you to want to go in a certain direction or do certain things, and caused you to make friendships that you otherwise might not. Well, you probably wouldn't have made.
No, I actively avoided it. Actually, I didn't want to be around them. But it is true. The thing that became the greatest commonality for me with them was our faith, and that became part of our conversations and the way that we lived our life, to where before I found Jesus, I didn't get that. I just was like, oh, this is a weird conglomeration of people that make no sense on paper. And I think that's one of the things that, we'll talk about more later, but just that practicality of what community looks like now, post following Jesus.
Well, and we were looking in Acts chapter 11, and that's one of the reasons I still stayed in Acts with this series, because that is what is. I know, because we talked about I wasn't going to do that, but I'd gone so many places. I'd read through Colossians again, read through Ephesians again, read through most of Romans again. I'd look back. I was trying to figure out where, because there's so many places that you can go. This is all after Jesus comes and changes the world, and just trying to look for what are the commonalities with our lives and their lives. And so this one, then I ended up back there because I was just thinking, here's Peter. Everything has changed. It's Jesus, and he's still going through the changes himself, as he is Jewish, or as we said, he is a believer of the circumcision,
circumcised believer.
And but he's not the same. And there's this new connection that he has with these Gentiles because of that, and it affects him, and he is actually defending that, which he didn't before, because he still wanted to be of the circumcision, and he'll struggle with that later, even in the book of Acts. But as we do, it's not over. We still struggle with that. We want to be on the end, cool. We want to be accepted. We want to be, part of the group. And all of a sudden, though, this thing that happened still continues to change. And I would say this is what, for me, for this series. So what's the benefit to me?
Yeah.
Why would it matter to me? And that's kind of our subtitle, why what Jesus did matters to me. Why would that matter to me? Because that's human. to think, and so?
Oh yeah.
Why would I care about that?
And you and I, we love the why questions because
Yes.
I don't know, maybe we're just both not natural rule followers. Maybe that's just who we are. But for me, that is the biggest thing of when I'm trying to tell someone about Jesus, if I'm not giving this is how it's changed and this is why this matters, I think in our culture today, I think most people are going to ignore us and be like, well, so I do these things, but still, like, at its core, why should I do these things?
Right.
And what benefit does this add to my life today?
Yeah. So I had a, like I said, church background, religious background in that sense. As I would say, it was that our mom and dad raised us to be morally competent and know what morality was and do good things and do the right thing. And that was much more early on the idea of what Christianity was to me, which, listen, that is a part of Christianity, no doubt about it. But as far as a reasoning, I know a lot of people struggle with, but why would I want to do those things? Why? I mean, is that really going to benefit me? And at some point, as you get older and you kind of grow into your own person, a lot of people then want to say, but this is me, and chase other things. And I just think that for me, who Jesus was made such a big impact, for me as far as the future was concerned and everything else too, that, I mean, with my wife, I mean, the reason Joni and I got married had a lot of, I was attracted to her. I liked her a lot and everything about it. But her faith.
It's good to get that on record.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Her faith, well, she will remind me of that. Her faith was, without that part of it. And then as you go into the future, if it weren't for that part of it, there are plenty of times when we will both say, if it weren't for our relationship to Jesus, we might not have made it, because it pulls you back to what's important.
What shifts your perspective.
It does.
It grounds you.
Yeah, it does. And I know the same thing with you.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely once also on record attracted to my wife, so I want that clear. But
she's a redhead. You should be attracted
smart.
to her.
And best, I literally looked at her this weekend. I was like, my one good decision of marrying you set me on a path of good decisions.
Yeah.
And so, like, thankful for my wife. But the thing that most drew me to her was her faith and her ability to also draw other people to their faith.
Right.
And I remember talking to one of my friends. We were walking, and I was like, hey, thinking about asking out Brittany, on a date. And he's like, well, you'd be an idiot not to. And I was like, that was maybe the best confirmation I had to, I'm probably making a good decision here.
Probably a good decision.
But it's just, I mean, I really go back, my parents. And my parents did a good job of explaining the gospel to me when I was growing up. And for me, I think just growing up in the Woodlands and wanting the achievement and to be good and be seen as excellent really is kind of what took me away from the gospel for a season. And then it for me was really, I had a place where I just felt sad and desperate and lonely to where that's where Jesus made an impact in my life of, gosh, God, I don't know where I'm going. And my identity that I had in sports was being taken away from me. And where do I go from here? And for me, that first initial benefit was God answering me in my sadness and in my depression and showing me a new way to live my life afterwards.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of, for a lot of us, that the why benefit changes.
Yeah.
It's not the same for all of
if
us.
you look at the culture, I understand, I as humans, we should think this way. Why would I do this? Why would this be something pursuing? That's just the way we're built and wired to think that way. And I don't have any problem with that. I think that it's a good thing, even though sometimes people will perceive that in religion, you shouldn't ask the why question. You just do the right thing. And I don't see that. I mean, I do see some of that, but I don't see that as strongly in the book of Acts and in the New Testament.
You don't really see that in Jesus' interactions.
No, you
with people.
don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a good reason to follow him and trust him, because he was about, it's some things we're going to talk about in the next weeks coming. There's a future in it. Mm-hmm. There's a change in it. There's one of the things you have in this culture is people will talk about Christianity as the divider of people. It's the thing that separates people and makes people mad, angry, fight against each other. And that is true to some extent. But if you look at what Jesus did, he brought people together.
Yeah, he was a unifier.
Yeah, the Jews and the Gentiles could not get along at all. They had no reason to get along. They didn't see that as beneficial to either one of them to have anything to do with the other group. And all of a sudden, he has brought them together, convinced Peter, and Peter just gives this resounding idea. Listen, if God has accepted both,
then who am I?
how could we be against that? And that is part of a trust, part of a faith that if we do this, this will turn out to be a really good thing, and a lot of people would doubt it.
Well, it's the first time too you see, kind of in human history, and specifically in a religion, where your background doesn't matter, and it starts crossing divides. Like you see, even in the Book of Acts, back then at their time, where you lived in this small little community, and you had walls around it. And I'm with just the Jews, or I'm with just the Gentiles or the Romans. And this is the first time you kind of see people crossing walls.
Yeah,
like I'm going to go where they are, and I'm going to start meeting them where they are at. And so I think that's like you really see just in the beginning of Christianity. It's the first time you really see these people going outside of their context to unite on something outside of their background.
Right. And it's one of the reasons I brought up at least just those two verses out of Corinthians. Yeah. And in Galatians, Paul talks about it there also, because there is that divide, and there are always people who want to bring back the divide.
Oh yeah,
and there are reasons to do that. I understand. Depends on how you look at it. But in Corinthians, where he talks about saying that, I used to see it this way. I used to look at Jesus the way I look at people, from a human perspective, but I don't see him that way anymore. And once he realized who Jesus really was, and because of that, I don't look at him that way. So why would I look at myself that way? And then that great verse about, therefore, if anybody is in Christ, he's a new person. He's a new creation. And the old things have passed away. And he's not talking about that we still don't struggle with old things, or, we still don't live in a world. He's just talking about the whole perspective has changed. A new life has come, a new way to see people, and new way to see ourselves, because we don't see God the same way anymore. So,
well, and because we don't see God the same way anymore, we then don't see ourselves the same way anymore. And then we don't see people the same way anymore.
Right.
Well, and even like when we were talking about earlier, how we began to see the people that we wouldn't have been friends with before, we now see as friends. I think is a great example of what that verse embodies of, I judged you by human standards before, but now we have this commonality, which is Christ Jesus, that we can now be unified, even though the world would say, like, you should have some differences.
Sure, and we do.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be that way. We're still designed to be unique and different backgrounds. And I still like to tell people, I said, you still have a background, and you still carry your history with you.
And your background matters.
Yes. But the trajectory of where your life is going has changed. And when you see that as a different direction, then that's what changes everything. So.
Well, and you still use the ways that you have interest in your background to influence the world around you. Like who I am and how I grew up gives me an ability to interact with the people that are like me and influence them for Jesus that other people couldn't do because of the things that God has made me passionate about, and also the way that I've grown up that people outside my context would have a much harder time doing. Yeah. And so your background does matter. Like
it does.
It matters a lot, and how you can influence people and how you.
So let me throw this hard question at you.
Okay.
Because, and I know you're putting your coffee down because I haven't prepared for this.
Well,
he hadn't warned me ahead of this.
The intensity ramped up, so it's like can't be holding.
So
something.
Knowing all this and seeing all this, how do you see that in our world, and how the possibility, at least of what we know of the effect of that, the good effect of it on our world, as far as where our world is going and where we are now? Excuse me.
No, you're fine. That is a big question.
I coughed to give you a chance to think
give
about.
Me a time to think.
What did he just hit me with? And
I mean, you kind of mentioned this earlier. We have been seen, and I think rightfully so, because I think sometimes we have messed up in Christianity, and I think at times we have been dividers of people in church history. And I think I understand where people are coming from, that when they do accuse us of such things, that there's a reason why. But I would add that if we stay true to who we are as Christian people, then I think that we have the potential in a world that's never been more divided, in a world that's never been more at odds with each other, even in family dynamics and social media and things like that, that we have the potential to be unifiers. And I think that can speak a volume to the world around us, because if I'm doing this right, to your verses in Corinthians, well, I'm looking at the world differently.
Right.
And I think one of the major things that I'm looking at differently is that I'm looking at through a lens of what matters to God.
Right.
And I think what matters to God is me being a person that is trying to unify people and bring them to Jesus. And it's not about Chris's well-being, and it's not about, hey, I want good things to happen to me, but it's about, hey, I care about my community and I care about the people around me. And I think if we can get back to that, and we can maybe stop caring so much about my viewpoints or my political opinions at times or things like that, that I think we could speak volumes to the world around us.
Okay. There was a don't remember exactly who I heard this from, but I thought it was interesting in our day too, with artificial intelligence and the explosion of that into the way we think and what we do. They were talking about how where everything else is going to be more artificial.
Yeah.
That means it just comes from somewhere. It's created.
It's not human.
Comes,
Yep.
Yes, that we have a chance to be more human.
Yeah.
And I thought, and
That was Arthur Brooks that said that.
Was it? Okay.
Because you and I listened to that same thing.
and we would look at that, or probably the culture would look at that as, well, that's a detriment. Why would you want to be more human? And I even think a lot of times in Christianity, people would say, no, I don't want to be more human. That's the problem, is more human. Okay, so then what's the answer, though? Because the answer is that God or Jesus is not artificial.
He's certainly not. Yeah.
I mean, he is living and makes things alive. You know that one verse out of in the Old Testament where it talks about I will not put the law as like writing it, carving it on a piece of stone for you anymore, like you have a stone heart, but I will put it on a living heart. Yeah. A flesh heart is actually what he uses. And we would say, well, no, the flesh is bad. Well, there is a part of that term used in the Bible as being bad, but there is, especially there, a part of it is, no, it's alive. It's living. That's what you want. When we do communion, it's about, he has made us alive to God and given his life to rescue us from death. So why would we, but I do understand why we think that sometimes.
I get it, but I do think we are forgetting that God made us human for a reason when we're doing that. There's a reason why he said that we were made in his image and that we are the imago Dei, that we are made in the image of God. And so our humanity does matter. And it's crucial to our actually somewhat understanding of who we are, that God made us human. And I do think that one of the things that the church can do in this season, to what you were saying earlier and to Arthur's point that he was making, is that we have the potential in a world that is more isolated and more artificial, to your point, that we have the potential to be human and that we have the potential to relate and to be in community together. And I think that's one of the specific things that the church, why the church matters, is that it's a place where community and people intersect. And I think more and more we're seeing less of that.
Right. And I think that, there are a lot of people who I think have an idea that artificial would be equal to good or better. And if we could get artificial, it'd be right, correct, and all that. And in not understanding, still with AI, artificial just means a computer's gone and found it somewhere and brought it back to you. And it may not even be correct, but throwing it all at you. And there's something about who we are as human beings, flawed. But something about who we are that God made us with this possibility of being able to discern, try to understand right from wrong, good from evil, to say, even looking at, because we're going to take a look at in the weeks to come too, a little bit more of the law and the struggle with the law in the Old Testament. And it is, as Paul would say, the law is not bad. Are we saying that the law is bad or not? Oh, no, may it never be that we'd make a statement like that, because that would be incorrect. But the changes that he is bringing are changes to actually bring us more toward what is good and the good that we can become, still flawed.
Yeah, get us closer back to the garden.
Yeah.
We're trying to get back there. Well, and even, not to take it a little sideways, but just, the artificial not working. There's already so much coming out that when we start using AI for loneliness or trying to use it for therapy or trying to use it as a buddy, the damage that's already incurring because it's trying to replace what we need as humans with something artificial.
I agree, and I think that's sad too, because it's hard enough to have a living relationship with God, even though Jesus came, even though He gives us His Spirit, even though you have the Word, which is often described the book as a living Word. It's hard enough for that to be living for us, because it's not just what we touch or see and interact with, but it's definitely what we need. It's definitely the part that fills us with hope and an anticipation that we can do good things and that the world can get better and do good things. Even though, listen, I don't believe we'll ever fix it.
No,
but He will one day.
Yeah, one day.
And that's what we're hoping for and looking forward to, the day He fixes it.
Yeah. Well, you at the end, you kind of got into 3 very practical steps. Of just here's what we should do, and here's how we should.
I felt
live.
pretty old school doing that. Just let you know,
it's not what you usually do. When you did it, I was kind of a little flabbergasted. Of like, this is very like to the point with Steve. And
and I never get to the point. So and to go back to especially with my green Bible. So, but it does take me back, to how much the Bible became alive to me. That especially that junior year of high school, going into the senior year, somewhere in there, and how much that God used that to transform me and to change me. And I always love to say, because I got to work with single adults down in Houston for so long, and it was one of the points we always emphasized with singles is you can't make it by yourself. You can't go it alone. Bad idea. We weren't made to do that. I understand why it happens, and I understand when someone says, "Well, here's my reason." Okay, that's fine. It's still not a good thing, and sometimes it's hard to do life with other people. But that was the way God made us, and we need life with Him, and we need life with others in order to grow and to move forward. And not throwing my memory verses.
Well, yeah. Well, that first one you talked about with you can't live in isolation, like that's not good for us. Maybe you've gotten this before. I'm sure you have. I've had people come up to me and be like, "Well, that doesn't mean that I need the church. I just need to have friendship and stuff like that." Why would you maybe say that that's not?
Well, enough? I think it's because I would say because it's a misunderstanding. When they're saying, "But I don't need the church," what they're usually thinking of is, "I don't need this organized institution." So the organized institution is just something that happens because as you get together with people, you're going to organize. You have to come up with some way to do it and some sort of structure. That just happens with everything. A group of friends that you have, there's somebody in that friendship that's the more dominant, somebody that's it's great.
It's organizing, that's leading it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, people do put their, I have friends that are a part of different groups, and they believe, no, it's the institution, organization. It's not. It's just a way of organizing the body, the group of people that come together. But the original, I guess the most original word out of the New Testament was the assembly. It's the coming together of the people is what they were kind of called long before, the German word for church ever came about. And it just means that he made us for one another. Same way the family, and even in family, things change. You're the dad right now, and Brittany's the mom right now, but one day, You'll be
grandpa.
Yeah, you'll be grandpa, and you'll be looking to your kids to, hey, y'all need to take care of grandpa because he's struggling now. So,
I have gotten a lot of pushback at times of like, hey, me meeting together with my friends at a bar talking about spiritual things. Why is that not enough? Like, why is it not enough for me to just informally do it? Why should I?
And I would just say, here's what I would say. So, you think informally at the bar you'll keep doing that?
No,
probably not. And that's so when you intentionally meet together to do something, you say, and this is the goal and this is where we're going with it. That's why it becomes something different. And that's what church is. It's something that is intentional. You know, sometimes I'll say when we start the service, I will, and before I pray, I say, we are here intentionally.
Yeah.
We are doing this for a reason. We gather for a reason. I used to tell people, they would say, well, we don't indoctrinate people. I say, oh yeah, we do. That's what you do. You're intentional. We have a reason for this. It's the same way you gather your kids together and you teach them because you know there's a future. They have roles to take on, and you're trying to help them to do that. And so we call that church and all too, and we need it.
Yeah, once for change to happen. So how do we change?
Yeah.
Well, we have to be intentional, and some version of formation has to happen. And
Yes.
the only way I'm going to change is actionable steps that are intentional, that are designed in which to change. And that's always my pushback too. It's that it's not about the organization. Like, it's not just because that we are a nonprofit by nature. It's because we intentionally have come together and we're trying to collectively, all together as a body of believers, trying to become better followers of Jesus. And that's where change begins to happen.
Absolutely. So Lord, help us to become better followers. Help us to have friends and build friendships intentionally to many times to move toward you. We thank you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
See you next week.